My stepsister sent her fiancé to break into my house for Mom's wedding dress, but my dog had other plans. I never thought I'd be dealing with a break-in at my house over a wedding dress, but here I am. I'm 26, and this whole mess started years ago when my parents split up during my teenage years. Looking back now, I can see how one event led to another, creating this huge mess I'm dealing with today. Let me start from the beginning. My parents divorced when I was 15, but they stayed friendly for my sake. I remember how they sat me down in our living room and explained that sometimes adults need to separate to stay friends. They both agreed it was better to split up than to keep fighting. At first, it was hard adjusting to living between two homes, but they made it work. They'd both show up for my school events and even had dinner together on my birthdays. When I was in my second year of college, my mom called me one evening, sounding happier than she had in years. She'd met Robert at her workplace. He was a widower with a daughter named Katie, and Mom couldn't stop talking about how kind and thoughtful he was. I was happy for her, but also worried. After all, I'd gotten used to how things were, and change isn't always easy. From the first day I met Katie, she made it clear she didn't like me. She was my age, but acted like I was trying to steal her dad from her or something. Every time we were in the same room, she'd give me these looks and make comments about my clothes or my weight. I tried being nice to her, thinking maybe she was just having a hard time accepting her dad was moving on, but nothing worked. I'd invite her for coffee, try to talk about movies or books, anything to find common ground. But she'd either ignore me or make some cutting remark that made me feel 2 inches tall. When my mom and Robert decided to get married, they planned a small backyard wedding. My mom wanted it simple, with just close family and friends. I helped her pick out decorations and spent weeks helping her transform their backyard into the perfect wedding venue. We hung fairy lights in all the trees, set up a beautiful arch for the ceremony, and arranged tables and chairs for about 50 guests. But Katie made sure to ruin every moment she could. During the ceremony, she kept sighing loudly and rolling her eyes. At the reception, she complained about everything: the food, the music, the decorations. She wouldn't even join for family photos, claiming she had a headache. I remember seeing my mom's face fall every time Katie made another rude comment, and it broke my heart. My mom kept telling me to be patient with Katie, saying she was probably still dealing with losing her mom. Everyone grieves differently, she'd say, always trying to see the best in people. But years went by and Katie never changed. She'd make fun of my grades in college, spread rumors about me to relatives, and always try to make me look bad. Once, she told our entire extended family that I'd cheated on an exam when I'd actually made the dean's list. It got so bad that I started spending more time at my dad's place during breaks, even though he lived across the country. The long flights were worth it to escape Katie's constant negativity. My mom would call, asking why I didn't come home more often, and I'd make up excuses about study groups or internships. I couldn't tell her the truth, that her stepdaughter was making my life miserable. Then came the worst news of my life. My mom was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. When she told me, I rushed home immediately, forgetting all about Katie and the drama. I remember sitting in the hospital room while the doctor explained the treatment plan, holding my mom's hand and trying to be strong for her. Robert was there too, looking lost and scared. While everyone tried to help and support Mom through her treatments, Katie showed her true colors. She never once offered to help with anything. Not the hospital visits, not the housework, nothing. One night, when I was crying outside Mom's room after a particularly rough day of chemo, Katie walked by and smirked at me. She even sent me horrible messages about cancer patients, including graphic photos and mean comments. I couldn't believe someone could be so cruel when we were all suffering. Mom fought hard but passed away a few months later. The funeral was small, just like her wedding had been. I remember standing there, accepting condolences from people, and Katie was in the corner, checking her phone and looking bored. After the funeral, we all went to hear her will being read. Mom had already told me that she and Robert had agreed their assets would go to their own children. It made sense, they'd gotten married late in life, and both had their own families and histories. But when Katie heard that Mom had left everything to me, including her wedding dress and some family jewelry, she lost it. She started yelling in the lawyer's office about how unfair it was and demanded that I share the inheritance with her. She said she'd been part of the family too, conveniently forgetting how she'd treated both me and my mom all those years. Robert shut her down quickly, reminding her that she'd get his assets one day and wouldn't want to share them with me. My dad, who was there too, suggested I move all my mom's things to his house to keep them safe from Katie. He'd seen enough of her behavior to know she might try something. I did exactly that, packing up Mom's clothes, jewelry, and especially her wedding dress with extra care. Robert helped me move everything, apologizing the whole time for his daughter's behavior. Over the next few years, I focused on finishing college and starting my career. I got a job at a marketing firm and saved enough to get my own place. I kept Mom's wedding dress safely in my closet, wrapped in tissue paper just like she'd stored it. Sometimes when I really missed her, I'd hold the dress close, feeling like a part of her was still with me. The dress wasn't anything fancy, just a simple white gown with lace sleeves, but it meant everything to me. Recently, Robert called to tell me Katie was getting engaged. Despite our history, I felt happy for her. Everyone deserves a chance at happiness, right? Robert invited me for lunch, saying Katie had grown up and changed. He sounded so hopeful that I agreed to come, thinking maybe time had helped heal old wounds. When I went over, everything seemed different. Katie was actually nice to me and showed me her engagement photos. Her fiancé seemed like a decent guy, and I started to think maybe she really had changed. But then she dropped a bomb. She wanted Mom's wedding dress. She said since she was getting married before me, she should get to wear it. When I refused, she offered to pay for it, like you could put a price tag on memories. I couldn't believe she'd think money could replace something so precious to me. We ended up arguing, with Katie claiming Mom would have wanted her to have it. I reminded her how she'd treated Mom during her illness, and left Robert's house angry and hurt. My dad suggested I install security cameras at my place, saying he didn't trust Katie. I thought he was being paranoid, but I did it anyway. Looking back now, I'm so glad I listened to him. A week after that disastrous lunch at Robert's place, I was at work in a meeting when my phone started buzzing with alerts from my security system. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was probably just a delivery person or something. But when the alerts kept coming, I opened the app to check the camera feed. My heart stopped. There was a man in a black hoodie, wearing a mask, trying to get into my house through the back door. I immediately called 911 and ran out of my meeting, not even bothering to explain to my boss. The whole drive home, I kept thinking about the dress and praying it would be safe. When I pulled into my driveway, there were already 3 police cars outside my house. As I ran toward my front door, I heard shouting from inside. When I got in, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The masked man was being held down by 2 officers, and my dog was standing guard, looking proud of himself. There was some blood on the floor. Apparently my sweet, usually gentle dog had taken a bite out of the intruder's leg. But the biggest shock came when the police removed the man's mask. It was Katie's fiancé. He started yelling as soon as he saw me, saying I needed to tell the police to let him go. He said Katie had sent him to get the dress, like that made it okay. The police weren't interested in his excuses, and took him away in handcuffs. I called my dad right after, and he booked the first flight out. While waiting for him to arrive, I checked my house. Nothing was missing. My dog had stopped the intruder before he could get to my bedroom where I keep Mom's dress. I gave my dog an extra big dinner that night, with a side of his favorite treats. Then the phone call started. Katie, her aunt, her cousins, they all started calling and texting me. They said I was overreacting by pressing charges. According to them, it wasn't really a break-in because he was family now. Katie's aunt told me I was being selfish and ruining Katie's wedding. Her cousin said I was making a big deal out of nothing. I blocked their numbers one by one. Then I got an email from Katie, begging me to drop the charges. She said her fiancé could lose his job if he had a criminal record. She promised they'd never bother me again if I just let this go. But I remembered all those years of her bullying, how she'd treated my mom when she was sick, and now this break-in. I wasn't going to back down. My dad arrived the next day, and we went straight to a lawyer's office. The lawyer said we had a strong case. We had video evidence of the break-in, and my dog's attack was considered self-defense since someone had illegally entered my property. She helped me file for a restraining order against both Katie and her fiancé. Robert called me that evening. He sounded tired and sad, apologizing over and over for what his daughter had done. He said he had no idea she'd planned this, and he supported my decision to press charges. It was nice to hear him say that, but I could tell this whole situation was breaking his heart. The next few weeks were busy with police statements and legal paperwork. My boss was understanding about me missing work for court dates once I explained the situation. My coworkers couldn't believe the story. One of them said it sounded like something from a movie. Katie tried to contact me through mutual friends, sending messages about how sorry she was and how she'd been desperate to make her wedding perfect. But I remembered how she'd smirked at me when I was crying outside my dying mother's room. Some things you just can't forgive. Her fiancé ended up pleading guilty to breaking and entering. His lawyer worked out a deal. He'd serve 3 months in jail and pay for any damages to my property. The judge also approved the restraining order, which meant neither Katie nor her fiancé could come within 500 feet of me or my home. You'd think that would be the end of it, but Katie's family wasn't done. They started posting about me on social media, calling me heartless and cruel. They said I was jealous of Katie's happiness, and that's why I wouldn't share the dress. Some of our distant relatives who didn't know the whole story started sending me nasty messages too. I decided to fight back with the truth. I made one post, sharing the security camera video of the break-in. I wrote about how Katie had bullied me for years, how she'd treated my mom during her cancer battle, and how she'd tried to steal a precious memory instead of just buying her own dress. I ended it by saying I was done being quiet about her behavior. That post changed everything. People who'd been criticizing me suddenly went quiet. Some of Katie's relatives even reached out to apologize, saying they hadn't known the full story. A few admitted that Katie had always been spoiled and manipulative, but they'd never thought she'd go this far. Meanwhile, her fiancé was starting his jail time. Robert told me Katie was postponing the wedding until he got out. Part of me felt bad for her. It couldn't be easy having your fiancé in jail right before your wedding. But then I remembered she was the one who'd sent him to rob me, and my sympathy disappeared. Update. 6 months have passed since everything happened, and my life has finally calmed down. Katie's fiancé served his 3 months in jail and got out. I heard from Robert that they got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. No big wedding, no fancy dress, just a quick legal thing with a few family members present. The court ordered them to pay me $11,000 for damages to my house. The back door needed replacing, and there were some scratches on the hardwood floor from the struggle. I also got compensated for having to take time off work for court dates. Katie's fiancé had to pay most of it since he was the one who broke in, but Katie had to pay some too because she was found to be equally responsible for planning it. Some people told me I should have asked for more money, but honestly, I just wanted it to be over. The restraining order was more important to me than the money. Now they legally have to stay away from me, my house, and my workplace. If they break that rule, they'll face serious consequences. Robert still calls me sometimes. He's trying to maintain a relationship with me, which I appreciate. He was a good stepdad, and none of this was his fault. We meet for coffee once a month at a cafe far from where Katie lives. He tells me about his life, but doesn't mention Katie unless I ask. I think he's given up trying to excuse her behavior. My dad finally went back home after staying with me for 2 months. He wanted to make sure I was really safe before he left. He helped me upgrade my security system and install better locks on all my windows. My dog got so spoiled during Dad's stay that he still sits by the front window every afternoon, probably hoping Dad will come back with more treats. At work, things got better too. My boss gave me a promotion last month. She said she was impressed by how professionally I handled everything while still keeping up with my projects. My coworkers stopped treating me like I might break at any moment, and the whole incident became just another crazy story people sometimes mention at office parties. Last week, something unexpected happened. I got a letter from Katie's aunt, the same one who'd been calling me selfish for pressing charges. She wrote that she'd been wrong about everything. She said watching Katie's behavior during the whole ordeal had opened her eyes to how manipulative her niece could be. She apologized for not seeing it sooner, and for all the mean messages she'd sent me. The letter made me think about how this whole situation affected more than just me and Katie. It revealed things about people we both knew, who stood by what was right, who made excuses for bad behavior, who changed their minds when they saw the truth. Some family relationships were damaged forever, while others grew stronger. I still have Mom's wedding dress. It's safely stored in a special preservation box now, something I bought after the break-in attempt. Sometimes I take it out and remember Mom wearing it at her wedding to Robert. She was so happy that day, hoping her marriage would bring our families together. I wish things had turned out the way she wanted. Robert told me recently that Katie and her husband moved to another state for his new job. I felt relieved hearing that, not just because of the distance, but because it meant they were moving on with their lives. Maybe being away from all the drama will help Katie grow up a bit. Though honestly, I don't really care anymore. I've learned that you can't force people to change or make them understand why their actions are wrong. My dad says this whole experience made me stronger, but I don't see it that way. I think it just showed me who I already was, someone who could stand up for themselves when needed. Mom always told me to be kind, but never let people walk all over me. I think she'd be proud of how I handled everything. Last month, my best friend got engaged. When she asked if she could try on Mom's dress, not to wear at her wedding, just to see how it looked, I surprised myself by saying yes. We spent an afternoon looking at it together, and for the first time, I could talk about Mom and her wedding day without feeling sad. The dress doesn't feel like something I need to protect anymore. It's just a beautiful reminder of my mom and the love she had for her family. I've started dating someone new. He knows the whole story. It's kind of hard to hide when there are news articles about the break-in online. When I showed him the dress, he said it was beautiful, but not as beautiful as the stories I tell about my mom. It was the right thing to say. Looking back at everything now, I can see how a wedding dress became so much more than just a piece of clothing. It represented all the hurt and anger between me and Katie, all the years of her jealousy and my pain. But it also represented my mom's love, my dad's protection, Robert's loyalty, and my own strength. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Katie had just asked nicely to borrow the dress in the beginning. Would I have said yes? Probably not. It meant too much to me. But we could have talked about it like adults instead of ending up with restraining orders and jail time. I guess we'll never know. The security cameras are still up at my house, and my dog still guards the back door like a professional. Some habits are hard to break, and being careful isn't a bad thing. But I don't check the camera feed obsessively anymore, and I'm not afraid every time I hear a noise outside. Life has moved on. I'm focusing on my career, spending time with friends, and making new memories. The drama with Katie feels like something that happened to someone else, like a story I read in a book or saw in a movie. The wedding dress stays in its box, safe and sound, waiting for whatever the future might bring. Mom used to say that everything happens for a reason. I'm not sure I believe that, but I do think how we react to things shows us who we really are. Katie showed who she was by trying to steal something precious to me. I showed who I was by standing up for myself and what was right. And that wedding dress, it's still just a dress. But it's my dress, my mom's dress, and no one can take away the memories it holds.